Bonjour. These are the notes that you are going to be taking at home now or from your smartphone anywhere you are instead of in class. When we're together in school, we're going to be doing activities that might have otherwise been assigned for you to do at home. This way, if you have questions, you can ask while we're doing them. Let's get started. Les notes pour aujourd'hui. We're going to start our notes today with something that might sound a little familiar for you, but we're going to get ourselves warmed up for this new topic. Les verbes réfléchis au présent is reflexive verbs in the present tense. Let's start by talking about something we learned in French 1. You learned how to say what your name is. How would you say that? Je m'appelle, and whatever your name is. If you are going to ask someone what their name is, we have a couple of ways that we could do that. You could ask them, Tu t'appelles comment? Or, Comment t'appelles-tu? One of the nice things about this kind of notes is if you feel that I'm going too fast and you need to stop and take something down, you can pause this screencast at any time. So let's go ahead and continue. This is something that you know how to do. When you say je m'appelle, you're literally saying I call myself. And then we have tu t'appelles comment, which is you call yourself what. So if you think about some of the new vocabulary that we learned recently in our routine quotidienne, we learned some expressions like se laver, se réveiller, se lever, and these all mean things that that people are doing for themselves in their daily routine. And you already worked with this. You learned how to say, and you've done it in class, to say that you're washing yourself. You learned how to say je me lave, and you asked some of your friends, tu te réveilles. So what's going on here is that we have our verbs are being conjugated just like they normally would. An ER verb would have this kind of ending. For the je form, for the tu form, we have our S. That is not going to change. We're going to continue to do that, except what's different for us are these two new pronouns. That's what we're going to be talking about today. So first, let's start by looking at a few pairs of sentences. In this first sentence, Paul regarde le bébé. What is Paul doing? He is looking at the baby. In the second sentence, Paul se regarde. Who is he looking at? Himself. Whenever we see this new pronoun, we can almost always add a word self in there. Himself, herself, myself, yourself. Let's look at another couple of examples. Anne couche le bébé. Anne is putting the baby to bed. But in this sentence, Anne se couche. She's putting herself to bed. This is a long paragraph of notes, and this is why this method is so great. I'm going to go ahead and read through this, but if you need to, you can pause this and finish taking the notes. Also, the benefit to doing this way instead of just looking in the book and taking the notes that are either in the book or in a packet is I'll add some other descriptions or some other explanations that might help clarify this a little better for you. So, looking at the sentences, on the previous slide, In the sentence on the left, one person performs an action and another person receives the action. A baby is receiving the action of being put to bed or being looked at. But in the sentences on the right, the person performs the action and also receives the action. For this reason, the pronoun se in those two sentences must be used. Se refers to the subject or doer of the action and is called a reflexive pronoun. It indicates that the action of the verb is reflected back to the subject. So we worked with some of these already for je, tu, and then il, elle, on for some of our verbs. So let's start going over them, and we're going to learn some new ones now for our plural subjects. So look what happens with se laver. In the je form, we have this new pronoun me. Je me lave. Tu te laves. That's for the tu subject. So we have now me and te. And then, of course, as we saw in the previous slides, we have the pronoun se. Il, elle, on se lave. These are ones that look familiar to us at this point. But now, let's look at what we would use for nous and vous. We are going to use another nous in a new sentence. Nous, nous lavons, so we are washing ourselves. Vous, vous lavez. So this is going to take a little bit of getting used to. We have to be used to the fact that we are now going to be using these pronouns twice in a row. We're not developing a stutter. This is just how we use it. For il and elle in the plural, we're just going to use se again. But notice that the verbs are conjugated like they normally would be in all of the situations. What I'm showing you here is the verb s'habiller. And I'm showing you this one because s'habiller is one of those words that starts with a vowel sound. And it's going to change the spelling of a couple of our pronouns. So I'm going to go ahead and just show you what they look like. The nous and the vous will not change, but the rest of them will slightly. Je m'habille, tu t'habilles, on s'habille, nous nous habillons, vous vous habillez. You'll notice here that the nous and the vous are going to be treated with a liaison that is going to blend in better with the word that comes after it. And then, of course, for il and elle, s'habille. The reflexive pronoun cannot be separated from the verb. In the negative, ne comes before the reflexive pronoun and pas comes after the verb. So when you see some of the examples, this might make more sense. The me and the réveil must stay together. Je me réveille, mais je ne me lève pas. Do you see how the me and the verb stay together even in the negative? So you'll have a chance to practice some more of these later. On ne se lave jamais les dents avant le dîner. So same thing here. Instead of pas, we have jamais, which means never. So we never brush our teeth before dinner. And here we have the se. On ne se lave jamais les dents avant le dîner. And here's another with a negative. And again, notice that now this nous is breaking up our stutter a little bit. And the verb and this pronoun are still staying together. Nous ne nous lavons plus les cheveux tous les jours. So I have right here 5 sentences that I would like you to practice writing the reflexive verbs in They might not all be reflexive though. If these are actions that are happening back to the doer, then they're reflexive. If not, they're not reflexive. So you're going to have the chance to pause here when I tell you to, and you're going to rewrite these sentences in your notes with the correct form of laver in here. This is going to be how I check that you've done the work that you're supposed to do on your own as far as watching the notes. When you get into class, I'll ask you to show me your notes and I'll check that as your daily homework. So go ahead and solve these or rewrite these, and when you're ready, hit pause. Once you're done writing them, hit play again and you'll see the answers. Pause now. These are the answers to the sentences that you have just rewritten. So you see that we have the nu is with the verb. So these reflexive pronouns is what we're calling them, are right with the verb. They stay with the verb. If you notice in number 3, it's not reflexive. She is washing the dog. She's not washing herself. So that one was not reflexive. And then number 5 had an example for us of a negative statement. So go ahead and make your corrections, and if you missed any of them, make notes and give yourself an explanation as to why. If I did not provide you with an explanation as why something is the answer that it is, that's a great thing for you to bring into class for a question. Now we're going to move on to something else that still has to do with these reflexive verbs. Pause as you need to. We're going to talk about a verb plus the infinitive. We learned that when two verbs are walking, the first one does the talking. So that's what we're talking about here. When a reflexive verb follows another verb, the reflexive pronoun agrees with the subject. So we have a verb like vouloir. Je ne veux pas me lever. The reflexive pronoun agrees with the subject, and that's always the case if it's a reflexive verb. Even though the je and the me are now far apart, there's all of this between them, je will go with me, and so on. For this one, vous allez vous coucher tard. This is the verb, this is the infinitive. So even though they're not right next to each other, this is still going to happen where we have the verb plus the infinitive. So let's use those sentences that you've just rewritten, and you're going to rewrite those again, except you are going to add a new verb into the sentence. Go ahead and rewrite these, pause, and when you're ready, hit play again. Here are the answers to the questions that you've just rewritten. Now we've added the verb aller, so now we have nous allons. This subject is going to agree with this reflexive pronoun, and then here, this one is in the infinitive again. Same thing here, je veux, je is going to agree with me, verb plus the infinitive. And then we have these throughout. Number 3, of course, was a sentence that was not a reflexive sentence, so this has the verb plus the infinitive still stuck together. And number 5 shows us an example of a sentence in the negative. Tu ne veux pas te laver. Tu, te. So the me, te, nous, vous, me, te, ce, nous, vous, ce are always going to agree with the subjects. Je, tu. On, nous, vous, il or elle. They're always going to agree with that. So this was your first lesson in the flipped classroom that we are going to be doing more and more, especially for these grammar lessons. Please make sure to ask me any questions that you have and be ready to come to class prepared with your notes and anything that I might say in this presentation to have with you so that we can fully participate in our activity the next day. Merci beaucoup.